Welcome to the Restorative Nourishment Podcast, where we take a deep dive into specific health and nutrition topics with leading experts so you can have the tools and knowledge to take charge of your life and restore your health. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Restorative Nourishment Podcast. I'm Allie with NourishingMeals.com. And today I have my friend May Tom RD on today, and we're going to be talking about breakfast and supercharging your metabolism with balanced macros and everything that goes along with that. So May Tom is a registered dietitian with an extensive training in functional medicine and is a certified functional medicine practitioner. May loves helping people eat in a way that is most aligned with their genes, preferences, and current health status. California born and raised, May received her undergraduate degree in physiology and neuroscience from the University of California, San Diego. She received her master's in public health from Loma Linda University along with her dietetics license. May is passionate about optimizing patient outcomes through discovery, education, and behavior modification. And you have an amazing YouTube channel, which I'll link in the post below. So welcome, May. And today we're going to be talking about breakfast and really how to upgrade your metabolism, increase your energy, because energy is the currency of life. And a lot of people are really working to increase their energy so they can function their best and live their purpose, really. And that's something I've been working on for the last few years to optimize my energy. So welcome. So let's get started and just tell me a little bit more about yourself and how you got so interested in energy and metabolism.
Yes. Well, Allie, thanks again for having me. This is a podcast. I hope that it's part one because I know you and I have so much to talk about. But in short, when I was a young adult, I think I had thalassemia. It's a genetic blood issue. And so I've always been kind of a low energy person, always needed a lot of sleep, always got sick really easily. And so nutrition became like a tool that I noticed I could leverage very early on. And I was really fascinated with, like, whenever I didn't eat well, I would get sick, I would get tired, and life's demands just kept notching up as I got into graduate school, as I got married, as I had babies. I was like, oh, wow, like, how do people do this? There's so much demand on us. Modern day is, in a way, a health hazard, modern lifestyle living, and we have got to, in a way, like, optimize on all fronts. And so I really saw that nutrition was a powerful optimizer for me to be able to do all the things I wanted to do and show up for the people that I love, which I know your audience, a lot of your audience are mothers like us. And, I think we feel it the most. We're burning the candle on both ends all the time. And so how do we fuel so that we can keep up with the pace of life?
Thank you. Yeah, that is so true. And I know for myself that starting out the day with and I don't start out my day right away with breakfast anymore, which we were talking about. I wait a few hours, but I don't like to wait too long. But including a high amount of protein and healthy fats has changed the way that my body functions and is able to really take on life in a different way and be able to function my best. So let's get into meal timing. I think that's a great place to start.
What I found over the years working as a clinical dietitian in a clinical setting, plus just having private clients and working in a destination spa setting where there's just a lot of really successful people who are trying to optimize, I just found that breakfast was an afterthought for the majority of people. And when you go to a traditional breakfast place, it's all carbs. And so we don't really set ourselves up for success when we don't start the day off right. I mean, we kind of, getting up on the wrong side of bed, there's that kind of theory of, like, how we're fueling. Are we starting off the day fueling properly? And you and I have had this conversation where if you didn't sleep well, if you're under a lot of stress, you just tend to make poor dietary choices. You go more towards carbs because it's very soothing for cortisol and also raises serotonin. It's a little bit of a self-medicating thing that we just gravitate towards when we're stressed or underslept. And so to start the day off right, obviously being well slept is a precursor to any food that you ingest. I think you and I are on board with that, and really making sure we're not waking up in a really high stress state, because any food you eat under high stress is probably not going to be as beneficial as it could be. But with that being said, I agree. I think that starting off the day not on a blood sugar roller coaster ride, which in my world, metabolism and blood sugar, I see so many people with blood sugar issues who aren't diabetic, aren't even aware of being on the spectrum of even a little bit of prediabetes, but truly they're having energy and metabolism issues because they're not managing these big swings up and down. And starting the day off not on a big upswing is really important. And the fats and the fiber and the protein as a balanced part of a meal, and making sure the carbohydrates are in proportion to all of those things, is huge. And breakfast is not something that we're supposed to just plow through and move on to the next. Like, it should be one of the three meals that we strategically put together.
That's great. Yeah, one of the things that I found doing, and I didn't used to eat a lot of dairy, but I am have included some more fermented dairy recently in the last few years. Cottage cheese is great because 1 cup of cottage cheese has 30 grams of protein. Add some avocado and broccoli sprouts and egg, and you have a very high protein meal. And then if you need extra carbohydrate, sometimes adding a banana or some blueberries or something like that, some kind of high fiber, high nutrient dense carbohydrate is really helpful. And sometimes I'll even add like a handful of raw rolled oats, even if I need like some really nutrient dense carbohydrates.
Yeah.
So that's a great something that I've been doing, not every day, but and I usually wait about 2 hours to eat breakfast. I like to sort of get my metabolism going, and I will start the day out with matcha, which I know that that's a whole other ballgame, because when
Yeah.
we start with caffeine, we can go into an imbalance. But I've actually found that the high polyphenol in food is
Yes.
really helpful for me. But I also add a lot of fatty cashew milk to help keep it balanced.
Right.
So
Well, actually matcha has a lot of L-theanine, which is a calming amino acid. So there is a internally, like you said, the polyphenols, but it is in some ways balancing of the caffeine in there. I love matcha too. I actually just filmed a drinks video, and that'll be coming out next month. But matcha is definitely on the top of that list. And I would say a lot of people, coming to nourishing meals, like sending my patients to nourishing meals, a lot of people don't actually have framework for what are the possibilities for breakfast. They have like two go-to things that they grew up eating, like eggs or cereal or oatmeal. And then they're like, well, what else could there be? And it's like, there's so much more, right? And you can be so creative and also cater towards your own preferences. Like, I would love to eat dairy more often, but I've mentioned this in my videos as I break out, unless I'm in New Zealand, and I'm actually going there on Saturday for a month and excited about being able to eat dairy there because it's in a way somehow more suitable for me. But yes, dairy, cottage cheese, Greek yogurt needs to be the highest quality. And if you can't have dairy because of other reasons, lactose intolerance, or you have like issues like me, breakouts, or, you can, like for me, one of the things I love sending people to your website for are like the hashes that you have on there. I love the chia seed pudding options, the smoothie options with high protein. This morning for me was like chia seed pudding with some collagen and slivered almonds and blueberries, and like a sprinkle of like keto cereal just for the crunch. And for me, that's like over the top satisfying. And I could eat that every day. I try not to, because variety is also super important for our microbiome. And so I love that you have created this resource for our audience, both of our audiences, where it's like, let's get breakfast expanded. Let's get breakfast upgraded, and let's find the protein options. It doesn't always have to be just dairy or just chia seed. It could be the hashes, it could be the egg, and the egg could be, in a scramble. Like I had a patient yesterday who was eating lox on cream cheese and bread, and her sugar was spiking really high. And we were like, well, what else? You love lox. What else could you have that on? We were like, she loves it in like an egg scramble, and it's got that salty and it's got that protein. And so she was like, oh, that sounds really good actually. And the crunch, we were like, well, you could put it on cucumbers, like it doesn't have to be a carb heavy breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for what you've done with your website and giving us those options.
Yeah, let's talk about actually some options. So, breakfast hash, that's really an easy thing to do. You take some ground meat, about a pound of ground meat, and you can take a bunch of veggies, onions, and if you're on a low FODMAP diet, you can do green onions. Kale is a great option, zucchini, because they all cook really fast. And then you can add in some, if you want to add in a bunch of anti-inflammatory ginger or anything like that, or a bunch of fresh herbs, you can do that at the end. But about a quarter pound of meat. So if you're dividing that into 4 servings, which I will often divide it into like 3 servings actually. So a quarter pound of meat is about 22 grams of protein. So that's a lot. So if we're shooting for 25 to 30 grams of protein per meal, that gives you a solid base to start from. And you could add in like a handful of walnuts on the side, or even a little bit of cooked black rice or brown rice. And I have these options on the site. And I will often take leftover rice and ground meat and veggies and make it into a hash. And it's so satisfying. It will keep you going for hours and hours without being hungry at all. And I find that if there's a really solid meal like that, or something with cottage cheese and avocado and broccoli sprouts, that the ability to go to sleep early, it really resets your circadian rhythm, which is something you talk about in your videos, and sets the stage for the entire day to have balanced blood sugar. And I think it's really important for people to understand that inflammation, an increase in inflammation, is going to disrupt your sleep. There's this entire sequence of events that needs to happen to lower inflammation. And part of that is eating a blood sugar balancing breakfast that is high in fiber and phytochemicals and protein. So,
Yeah, I just want to mention, something you said is like really utilizing leftovers, because a lot of people go, I do not have time to make breakfast like that, on my way to work. And it does not have to be from scratch every single time. I oftentimes will roast vegetables and there's still some leftovers and cut them really small and put them in that hash, or like for Asians, we love stir fries, and a stir fry is just a chunkier version of a hash if you think about it, and you can repurpose these things without actually cooking everything from scratch. So I just want to encourage the moms out there who are like looking at your recipes going, I don't know that I have time for this. To be creative about leftovers the night before, because we all have leftovers. We either throw them away or we do something with them. And what about breakfast being that something, right? Because even you can just reheat it very quickly, put it in a almond, grain-free tortilla if you want, or a lettuce wrap, and boom, you could be on the road in the same amount of time it takes to cook eggs, just so I think it's just empowering us to, in a modern lifestyle, to say, well, what can I do versus I can't do that. I can't do that. Even smoothies. I've had moms go, I don't have time to make a smoothie in the morning. I'm like, could you set up your blender bottle all ready to go and then add the liquid and blitz it, and then now there's those blender bottles where you can just carry it out. You don't even have to, pour it out of the container. And even that is still a way to get all of those beautiful ingredients without actually in the morning washing everything, putting
yeah.
it in the blender. Because people look at that and go, I don't have time. So I just want to encourage people, like, you can be creative, set yourself up for the night before, utilize those leftovers, and you can still make those amazing recipes that are on your website, in this kind of good, better, best philosophy of like, okay, not everything is fresh the day of, but maybe some of it's maybe some of it's pre-cut, pre-prepared by someone else, and I mean, that's not the best, but it's still better than nothing. It's still better than running out the door and going through a drive-through to get coffee and an egg McMuffin or something. So I think that practicality side of like, how do we actually do this, is
Yeah, I think
important.
if we stick to the mindset of whole foods being the foundation, right, and we're not going out to do drive-throughs or anything like that, and you're only going to eat whole foods, then can you have some leftover chicken and some raw cheese and an apple for breakfast? You could do that. That would be better than, and a handful of walnuts or something like that, or half an avocado. That doesn't take any time at all. Or, sometimes I will take a dozen eggs and put them in my Instant Pot for 5 minutes and hard boil them. And then you have hard boiled eggs already ready to go. And one egg is about 6 grams of protein. So you can eat 3 eggs and get 18 grams of protein, and then add some nut butter with some fruit, and you can get up to 25 grams of protein pretty easily.
Yes.
So that's an option. So let's go into a few different macro options for people, and and kind of the protein carb breakdown of those. So let's talk about that,
Yeah.
and what ideas you have for that.
Yeah, so in my YouTube video, which everyone will get down below, I do have a simple formula: 30 30 30, 30 grams of protein, ideally 30, in terms of a third of your calories coming from fat, and less than 30 grams of carbs, just for those that don't want to be doing this. And so that's a really easy way. But like, we think of numbers like that and it translates really easily, but just for the people who don't think that way, like you said, one egg is 6 grams of protein, 1 ounce of meat is 7. Beans have protein, nuts have protein, dairy have protein, depending, right, on the form. So nut butters are on the table, nuts are on the table, hemp seeds, chia seeds are on the table too, as a form of protein and fiber. So I think it's important for people to maybe utilize your website to get an idea of what they like, and then they figure out quantities from there. So like you said, I like eggs. I like hard-boiled eggs. How many do I need to eat? Okay, that's 18. That means I've got 12 more to go. Where would that come from? Maybe I add a little bit of collagen in my matcha. I've had people also with chia seed pudding sprinkle in protein powder or cut up protein bars. And protein bars are like glorified candy bars in a lot of ways. But if you cut it up and it's like a decadent topping, and it's giving you protein, like, that's a hack. I find a lot of people find pleasant, right? Because I mean, I've had people go, you want me to blend up chicken breast every morning in my smoothie? Like, how am I going to do this? Like, it's really daunting. So I think find the recipe you like and then figure out the quantities. Like I always say, a mouse, which this is one of those old school mouses because my other mouse died. This is really thick. So this is about probably 3.5, 4 ounces, but we usually say a deck of cards is 3. So thinking about that, like 3, 1 deck of cards is 21 grams of protein. So again, you're 2/3 of the way there with a deck of cards of any kind of meat. You're, almost 2/3 of the way there with 3 eggs. So thinking about that, and then collagen or protein powders are a way to kind of maneuver those macros. So those are, and nut butters, adding the nut butters to the smoothie, adding it to the oatmeal if you want, like stir it in. And I have found, when people wear a CGM, they see the difference. That's one of the biggest things that can shift how quickly your blood sugar spikes, is how you can layer in the protein, fat, and fiber to slow digestion. And I always call it the difference between a fire hydrant into your bloodstream and an IV drip. You want the IV drip of sugar, steady, stable, drip into the bloodstream. That's a lot, like you said, a lot more anti-inflammatory, a lot less inflammatory. So, but yeah, like I put together, and I'm sure you'll put this together in your blog, Allie, but I put together recipes from your website and made it all in one link. The hashes are in there, the egg scrambles are in there, and then the chia seed puddings. Of course, all the smoothies on your website can have enough protein by just adding the protein powders in. So those
Yeah,
are kind of my go-tos.
I usually like to add, thank you for that. I usually like to add marine collagen peptides,
Mm-hmm.
branched chain amino acid powder, and creatine sometimes, and flax seeds or chia seeds, and, sometimes a little nut butter, not often, but to my smoothies, and a lot of cruciferous vegetables like cabbage and what you see on the website, right? You see all the different options, or kale or something like that. And some fruit, berries, and a little citrus or pineapple to like boost the flavors, and the vitamin C will really help to prevent it from becoming oxidized. So you can keep that smoothie for like 24 hours, make a big batch, and have some for the next day too.
Yeah, avocado goes really well in smoothies too, even though it's not a protein, it's that healthy fat and fiber.
Yes.
We used to make avocado like chocolate mousse at the spa and serve it as a dessert, and people are like, "This is avocado?" Like they were so shocked. And I
Mm-hmm.
know you have an avocado mousse on
Yeah,
your
yeah, I like to add
site too.
avocado to my smoothies too. That's a great option. Just half an avocado or a whole small avocado will really help to increase that creaminess of the smoothie, but also all of the healthy fats and potassium. So that's a
And by
great
the way,
option.
if you don't live in California, you can freeze avocado, like, and use it in smoothies. Like, I don't think people realize that, but
That
I mean,
is a great,
obviously, like, take it out of the shell and take the pit out.
yeah.
You can't just freeze a whole avocado. But I have some in my freezer right now, and I just thought about that. I was like, if I ever run out of fresh, I always have fresh, but smoothies, you like it cold, and so adding that frozen avocado in is almost like a frozen banana. It just makes it so creamy.
Mhm. That's a great idea. So we have like a breakfast hash, and I think I have this on the site with when I put a little bit of black rice in there, and a quarter pound of meat, some black rice, some veggies, super high fiber, and about 27 grams of protein, I think, for one serving, which, for somebody, that's a very small amount, really, a small serving. But if you're working out a lot and you're breastfeeding or you're pregnant, you could really up that to a third of a pound of meat and a little bit more rice, and get more than 30 grams of protein pretty easily.
You also have tofu scrambles on your site as well, right, Allie? Because I know I have some people that are sensitive to eggs, and it's on the top 10 of most sensitive foods. And so I always tell people don't overdo eggs because we don't want to one day turn on the immune system to the point
Yeah.
where like you've developed a sensitivity. So like those tofu scrambles with like a turmeric, I mean,
Hmm.
that's
Yeah,
also a great
they're
choice.
really good. I don't personally feel great eating a lot of soy, so I don't eat it a lot. I have it on the site, but that is a great option. Tofu, especially if you're doing like the sprouted tofu or the high protein tofu, um, that's a great option for people to have an egg-free or vegan high protein breakfast. And you can add a little bit of rice and some veggies and some fruit on the side, and that's an awesome option. So let's see. I think the other thing we were talking about is cortisol balance, right? So we covered that briefly, but one of the things when you're waking up with high cortisol in the morning, the only food that's going to calm cortisol down are carbohydrates, which is kind of a magic food, which is great to do it at night when you're really wanting to calm cortisol down and boost
Yeah.
melatonin if you're really still in a high cortisol spike. But starting your day out, as you get more sleep and you feel better, you can really start increasing that protein and fat, and get your blood sugar balanced and start your day out with a different kind of breakfast. So anything else to
Yes.
add to that?
I will say personalization is really important because I'm sure there's people listening going, well, does that apply to me? Like, I don't feel stressed, but I have a busy life, and like, how do I know if I have cortisol high at night or high in the morning that's abnormal? And that's where functional medicine really shines, is that layer of personalization. So I do want to say, like, we do check cortisol like salivary to see what your curve looks like if we're curious. And the signs of that would be not being able to sleep well, waking up early morning, kind of racing thoughts, like that could be a cortisol spike too early. I think it's important to measure. And then absolutely love having people wear a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, because they can log, at least the platform I use, they can log like if they slept well. And we can see if they slept well because their blood sugars will be high if they didn't sleep well at night. But you can see how the carbohydrates, like even the same carbohydrates, will do a different number on your blood sugars depending on how well you slept and how stressed you are. I had a patient last week who was like, we were looking at her CGM data together, And she had just listened to the debate and was really upset and then slept really bad. And the next day, her scores were just in the trash can, even though she was eating all the same things. And it was just a way to proof in the pudding to say there are other hormones at play besides insulin and, carbohydrates. There's cortisol makes a big difference. And again, I think some of these biofeedback, lab testing can just give you that extra layer of like, yes, I need to do this. No, this doesn't apply to me. I mentioned in my breakfast video that I have a certain gene that makes me hold on to melatonin in the early morning longer than most people. And melatonin makes you insulin resistant. So I actually have to be careful with my carbs in the morning, especially if I wake up super early, because I'm going to be more prone to having those blood sugar spikes compared to the average person who doesn't have this gene. And it was just fascinating to find this out because I'm like, that's why eating, like sleeping in and eating a little later seems to be so much more aligned with my circadian rhythm. And so knowing your rhythm is really important too. And breakfast is a part of waking up the body and being on a rhythm. And that's where waiting too long for breakfast, I know we didn't talk about this directly, but like you wait a couple hours, but you don't wait too long. Waiting too long can actually give you like almost like a circadian rhythm jet lag. And they've done research on this to prove that like people who even lived in the dark but ate on schedule, their bodies followed the same rhythm as if they had light and dark exposure. So food is a powerful, we call it Zeitgeber, which is a time giver. It helps inform the rhythm. So skipping breakfast all the time may not be honoring to your cortisol levels, to your hormone levels, to all of the rhythms happening in your body. So sorry, I don't know if that answered your original question, but
That
I
was
wanted to add
that was
that.
wonderful. Thank you. I think that was beautiful. So we'll wrap this up and just you can go to nourishingmeals.com and you can go to May's YouTube channel, and I'll link your YouTube channel below. But we can start breakfast within a few hours of waking. Within 2 hours is the best time frame for most women, especially women over 40. And to balance your breakfast with 25 to 30 grams of protein, get enough fiber, add in, you said in your video, at least 3 vegetables. I don't always do that. Sometimes it'll be 2 and then some, handful of fruit or something like that. And I have blueberries out in my garden right now, so I'm out there all the time picking fresh
Lovely.
blueberries. And if you're overwhelmed with trying to plan breakfast every morning to include leftovers, make it really simple. Try not to overthink it, but just really focus on nutrient density, higher fat, higher protein, higher fiber, because that's going to slow down the blood sugar response of any carbohydrates you are eating. So it's a slow drip into your bloodstream, which then allows your body to handle that more effectively. Anything else to
Yes.
add there?
Yeah, I would just say, like you said, keep it simple, but use something like Nourishing Meals to do a little bit of planning. I think people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan, and a little bit of planning goes a long ways. And once you get in a rhythm of like the 5 things that your go-to, it's so much more automatic and so much less kind of daunting, if you will. So utilizing the right tools like your website, I think is really strategic.
I love that. 5 things. If you can find 5 new breakfast options and just rotate through those and stick to those, I think you're going to really have some transformational experiences with energy, increase in energy and metabolism and sleep and inflammation, blood sugar balancing, all of that. So thank you so much, May, for
My
coming on the
pleasure.
podcast. I'm really happy to be able to talk to you today, and I'm sure we'll have many more too in the future.
I would love to. Thank you, Allie.